Folks, it's happening. So that's the big story that I don't think people are talking about. Using the words fascism, using the words racism, using the words white supremacy, and connecting the dots for people based upon what Trump has already said and what he's already done. What do you think is the end game, folks? Take him literally and seriously.
Welcome to the Practivist Pod, the practice of activism made practical.
Today we drill down on the fight to save our health care and break down what exactly is in this Republican legislation because they keep adding stuff.
And then I have a conversation about the biggest grift in our history and Star Wars with author and creator of the Left Hook Substack, Wajahat Ali.
I'm Jessica Craven.
I'm Steve Pearson.
Stay strong. It won't be long. Yeah, yeah. We will build a better world.
Happy Wednesday, Jess.
Happy Wednesday, Steve. God, it's just every week is 1,000 years in Trumplandia. Really does feel
Trumplandia. It's the worst, most unfunny show ever. Trumplandia.
You can't turn off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I was thinking about what we were going to talk about today, and it's a lot about what we talked. It's very similar to what we talked about last week, because the fight that's the most immediate right now that we need our listeners and everyone to plug into is the fight to save our health care. And, you know, the Republicans are not backing down, but they are feeling the heat. And in private, I'm hearing that they're really worried about what this is going to do in 26, because, you know, many, as we talked about last week, including Valadeo, lost their seats around trying to get rid of healthcare and trying to get rid of the ACA. And so, you know, the calls are working. We just need to keep it up. I had coffee with my Congress member, Luz Rivas, Monday morning, and she's in a safe blue seat and is, you know, great, especially on environmental policy and is, you know, came into Congress like looking to like pass all these bills and do all this stuff. And now she's, you know, feeling like the best stuff that she can really do is anything she can do to fight back against this and stand up and help support the efforts that we're doing on the ground. Also, you know, in her own district office, supporting, you know, she's got a lot of members who are on Medicaid, you know, and rely on that. Supporting them, supporting, you know, a lot of folks who are worried about being kidnapped and sent out of our country. We're not even going to talk about deportations because that's not what's happening. It's outright, you know, abductions.
Yeah.
And then she's focused on trying to get some more colleagues in those seats and winning in 26 so they can, you know, really do some of the things that she came to Congress to do. Yeah. But the other thing that I want to say about her is, so her in a very safe blue seat, a new Democratic legislator, is getting completely inundated with phone calls. Like even her office is getting slammed with phone calls. And it's really exciting to hear that because she's like, my team is like treading water trying to keep track and get back to everybody because the volume is so intense. And you know, if that's happening in her office, I know that's happening in these Republican offices too. So that's really exciting.
That's good to hear, actually, because I had not heard as much recently about the volume of calls. I assume it's still very high, but, you know, we were hearing a lot about it for a while. And then recently, I haven't been. But, you know, I will tell you, I was, in D.C. last week talking to all these lawmakers. I think after we recorded last week, I went in for like a speed dating event with Congress members and interviewed a whole bunch of them. And it was really remarkable to ask every single one of them, you know, do our calls make a difference? Just because why am I not going to ask that? And to hear them all so earnestly saying, oh, you have no idea. You have no idea what a huge difference your calls are making. And so sincerely saying that and just saying, please keep them coming. Please keep going. And so, yeah, I mean, We are talking about the same thing that we talked about last week to some extent, but we have a lot more details on this bill than we did last week because, of course, we've gotten language. We're in markups right now, which I just want to interject. If you don't know what a markup is, don't be embarrassed because that is a term that none of us really needed to know what a markup was.
I hated getting markups in school. It was never a good thing.
Yeah. What's a markup? So basically what I will tell you, just in case you're like, I don't know what a markup is and I'm embarrassed to ask, a markup is for a committee what a sort of, what a floor vote is. So, okay, if you take a full bill and you go to the floor, there's a session before you vote on it where people can offer amendments. So a markup is when you do that in a committee with a section of a bill. So last night, for example, the Ways and Means Committee, which is the part that is in charge of really hashing out the tax cuts, they had their markup session and Democrats kept them up all night, basically, all night, offering amendments, even though they knew that not a single one of their amendments would pass because they wanted to get Republicans on the record voting down amendments to like protect, people with disability, protect people with Social Security, like just all of these things. And Republicans just voted against all of them because that's what they do. But that's what a markup is. And I just thought there's probably someone out there who wants to know what this markup is we're talking about this week. And that's what it is.
It's great. It's really helpful. And, we should jump right in. I want you to break down, what you have learned about this bill and some of these asinine, crazy provisions that Republicans keep slipping in there. One of them I'll just talk about, but then I want you to talk about the meat of it because I think people don't really. I'll say care. I'm going to say care about this one. They should, but there's so many important things that we're worried about, and we're just drinking from this fire hose of terrible, things, and the top of that is just straight up cuts to our healthcare and what that's going to mean for families all over the country. But everyone's least favorite senator. And when I say everyone,
sinner,
I mean Republican.
Also a sinner. You can call him a sinner as well. Yes, least favorite sinner and senator. Yeah.
Sinner and senator. And when I say everyone, I include Republicans in that too.
Absolutely.
This guy is so despised in the Senate. Famously,
okay, everybody take a second to guess who this is before we say his name. Yeah, go on. Yeah, fill in the blank in your head.
had a great quote in his book when he said about Ted Cruz. I actually like Ted Cruz more than most people like Ted Cruz, and I fucking hate Ted Cruz.
Let me just interject here before and we will put a bookmark in your thought because you're going to finish it. But I used to, back when I worked in retail, I used to wait on his college roommate. Who for quite a while had a Twitter feed where he just trolled Ted Cruz endlessly, and he really had bad things to say about him. He was very unpleasant to live with on many fronts, and just terrible. Anyway, yeah. So we said the name Ted Cruz. There you go.
No one likes him, and he slipped in a provision into this what is supposed to be a budget reconciliation bill to stop all AI legislation coming from the states, not even just federal, but saying states don't have the right to create any legislation around AI for 10 years. That's the provision that he tried to slip in.
What the fuck is that?
What the fuck? It's maddening. It's and here in California, we're actually in a fairly contentious fight to get some important AI legislation passed here on the state level. Simple stuff, to protect copyrights and centered around artists for their copyright and intellectual property and making sure that they're protected. Ted Cruz is saying no states. What happened to states' rights? I thought that was Republicans' thing.
Only when it's abortion and other things like that.
Anyway, and I don't mean to say people don't care about that because I know they do, but there's a lot. So talk about what else is going on.
But I think people actually really do care about that. I think that when you say that they want to stop all states from legislating, basically deregulate AI completely for 10 years. I think everybody can very viscerally understand how dangerous that is. And as Lee
I mean,
McGowan,
I rewatched The Terminator a few weeks ago, so there's that.
there's that. Lee McGowan, Politics Girl, had a video I was watching this morning where she was saying the crazy thing about it is like they're saying not for 10 years. Like AI, the regulation happens now or we're fucked. Like they'll literally, the robots will destroy us. Like it's so stupid. When I talked to Pete Buttigieg in my very sort of, imperfect interview that I did with him, he mentioned AI as one of the things he's thinking about most deeply. And he's like, we have got to be talking about it because it is going to affect jobs. Because Republicans are literally saying, when they were talking about cutting jobs at Social Security, they were saying the words, oh, well, robots will do those jobs. Like that's their vision. Yep. So, like, okay, Republicans, if that's your vision, what are you going to do with the workers? How are they going to feed their families? Oh, that's not material to them. So there's lots that needs to be talked about around AI. And I think Americans actually do understand that. That's why Republicans are trying to sneak this in a way that no one will even know it's there. So, okay. There's that. These are just the things they're sneaking in. Then we'll talk about the Medicaid. They're still trying to sell off public lands to oil and gas companies so that they can exploit them. Public lands, like national parks. They want to defund Planned Parenthood, which actually not only will not save them money, but will apparently cost $300 million to do. They're sneaking in the nonprofit killer bill again, the one that they tried to pass back in, I believe it was during Biden's lame duck period, that would give the president the ability to call any nonprofit agency he or she wants to a terrorist organization. Right. And basically take away their nonprofit status. There's something that makes it so that judges can't hold certain people in contempt. Like, it's basically a grab bag of everything Republicans want to do to take away more of our freedoms in a bill that is supposed to be only related about to the budget. Yeah. Only. That's why it's a reconciliation bill, and that's why they can pass it with only a majority vote. Otherwise, it has to go through the regular channels. So they're having their cake, they're eating it too, and then they're feeding us the cake, which is a poison cake. But it's only poison for us, not for them. That's a bad analogy. But
it's a fine analogy. And is there a phone number for the Parliamentarian? Because I know we give phone numbers for the, congressional offices, but
there is actually, and one of my subscribers put it in the comments to my newsletter a couple of weeks ago, and I am not certain that we can lobby the Parliamentarian. And here's the thing, is that even if we could, she can be overruled easily. The Republicans can just say, well, we're not going to listen to her. Yeah. And there's lots of people who think that that's exactly what they're going to do. When you're dealing with a party that is essentially lawless, why are they going to follow what is essentially a norm? Listening to the Parliamentarian is a norm. So yeah,
that's something that was disappointing to me in Biden's tenure, especially in the first couple of years when we had the House and the Senate. So many of these norms were just blown out of the water in Trump's first term, and like job number one really needed to be, making these laws, like making, putting some teeth to these, sort of gentlemen's agreements in the Senate or whatever, they used to be in old timey Senate land, right? Yeah. No one would break these norms because this is the way we do it. Well, now they're all breaking them. So we had the opportunity to, put some more teeth in that. And I'm sure they would have fought back against it, but we would have better levers than just like, you're not supposed to do that,
Right.
So that's
and not only that, but I believe that we had the opportunity, and I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we could have raised the minimum wage, but the Parliamentarian ruled that did not belong in a reconciliation bill. And so we took it out instead of doing what Republicans are doing now. I'm just saying, well, then fuck the Parliamentarian. Like, that's the thing, is that they keep coming in and sort of busting all the norms and the rules. And then we come back in and go, well, but we are going to abide by the rules. And
we better not break the norms. Yeah.
You just can't do that anymore. I mean, it's just, So anyway, so that stuff is all in there. And when you call, please, there are so many things. I know it feels really overwhelming, but try to squeeze in something else. Like the Medicaid and the SNAP are really important, but please mention the AI bill or the Planned Parenthood or the public lands, or the judges should be able to do whatever justices want to do because they're a co-equal branch or whatever. There's just a lot of attacks, and I know we feel overwhelmed, but that's when we got to like take a breath, just pick one or two. And, you know, I know some people, there was someone who commented in my newsletter that she calls all 3 of each of her members of Congress's offices. So she makes 9 phone calls a day. So if you want to do that, call with different issues to every one of the offices, you know?
Yeah. But keep it up. Keep it up. I know you've been calling a lot, and, you know, this is crunch time right now because we really are slowing things down. I don't think they are on track to get this passed before Memorial Day. At least that's what they said last I checked in.
And even if they do, let's remember that if the House passes it, that does not mean we are done, because then it's going to go over to the Senate and they're going to pass a version which could be markedly different. We don't know that the Senate is going to want to do these Medicaid cuts. We don't know what they're going to do. And then the 2 chambers have to get together and reconcile. So best estimates, we know the debt ceiling runs out beginning of August. So I think Republicans really want to have this done by the end of July. So the whole process is going to take many twists and turns. And this was what the ACA fight was like as well. We lost and then they would make a little progress, but eventually in the end, we did stop it in the Senate with famous thumbs down.
Came down to that. I'll never forget that.
No, I don't think any of us will forget that. That was
incredible. That was
really
incredible.
important. Think about how many people would have died since then if the Republicans had managed to overturn the ACA. Think about it. And now they want to kill more people. So do you want to talk about briefly what the Medicaid part of this looks like?
Please, yeah. Go through that.
We'll be brief. Maybe next week we'll try to be brief. So basically what it looks like, what I want to say that's important is that you're hearing 2 different numbers battered around a lot. You're hearing 8.6 million. And you're probably hearing 14 million. And I want to explain why those different numbers. So the 8.6 million people is the number of people who will lose access to Medicaid, according to the CBO, as a result of these cuts. And that's likely over the next 10 years. So because some of these cuts don't come into play right away, but over the next 10 years, 8.6 million people. That is what they have estimated. The reason we're hearing this 14 million or 13 million number is because there are another 5 million people. So let's round that up to 9. Then there are another 5 million people who will almost certainly lose their insurance because Republicans have decided not to extend the ACA premium tax credit. Now that sounds like gobbledygook, but that was basically something Democrats passed to make it easier for people to afford their ACA premium payments.
Right.
So when they take those away at the end of the year, 5 million people will lose their health insurance completely because they won't be able to afford it. And another 20 million are going to see their premiums go up by average of $700 a year. So the 2 numbers you're hearing are the 8.6 million who will definitely lose Medicaid coverage, and then the additional 5 who essentially are reverting back to a status quo. And that's why Republicans are like, you can't count those people because they're reverting back to a status quo where they didn't have health insurance. So does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, no, it doesn't make sense. None of it makes any sense why you would want to do that. But
right. So that's why I am usually using the 8.6 million number, just because we don't need to hand or I'm explaining this difference because, otherwise they just accuse us of lying over and over again. And then we're getting lost in the weeds of this. Mm-hmm. So anyway, and 8.6 million people is a shitload of people losing their health insurance. So many people.
And also, and that doesn't, take into account the, just the lack of health care that people are going to experience when hospitals and health centers close because they're not getting that. And then the overwhelming cost that will have to states and to taxpayers in general, because like we talked about last week, when people don't have health insurance, they still go to the hospital If
They go to
they,
the
need to
emergency
go to the
room.
hospital and doctors still treat them, but
Right.
someone's got to pay for that bill. And, that's why, again, I'll just throw Medicaid for all out there, like a universal
Medicare for all.
health system, Medicare. Thank you. Sorry. Medicare for all, because a universal health system would, actually be economically much better for our country, not to mention the fact that healthcare should be a human right. So,
Right.
but thank you
one
for,
of the oh no, sorry. Well, I was just going to say, and one of the things that Medicare for All also does is, because everything is under that single payer, the paperwork goes way down, down. And
it's
right now,
way
so much
easier
of
for
what
doctors.
way easier, and so much of what we're paying for right now are administrative costs, these insane administrative costs. And the reason I mention that is because one of the big things that Republicans are doing in this bill is adding these work requirements, and that is basically paperwork requirements. It's drowning people in red tape. And I had a great interview with a woman named Andrea Dukas yesterday, who does healthcare policy for the Center for American Progress. And she said, we know these don't work. And in fact, I can prove to you that they don't work. She said, first of all, we have lots and lots of evidence. Arkansas tried it, and something like 18,000 people fell off the healthcare rolls who were qualified, who were eligible. But she said, if they did work, if these worked, right? So people would stay on Medicaid, but just have to work in order to stay on Medicaid. Why would Republicans be, if the whole point is to save money on Medicaid, why would they even be doing work requirements, right? Yeah. It wouldn't save them any money because those people would be working and on Medicaid. The reason they're doing them is because they know that it will push people off the rolls. So call bullshit when people are like, well, they're just asking able-bodied people to work. 92% of the people on Medicaid already work.
Right.
92%. The people who don't are caregivers who are taking care of someone who is also sick or taking care of a child. They can't work. So what this is going to force people to do is to drown in paperwork, and some people just will not be able to keep it up, and they'll fall off, and some of those people will die. So
yeah. And this whole dialogue, it's the racist Republican dialogue about a welfare state that is such bullshit, and has done so much damage to. That has been something they've been talking about for decades and decades
since
and
Reagan.
Decades.
Since
Reagan, exactly. The welfare mom or whatever.
The welfare queen, yes.
Welfare queen, exactly. And it's, not only is it wrong, but it's done so much damage to our country and how people look at our systems, that, the function of government should be able to support people, give them health care, give them the ability to work, and people want to work. No one's living off of SNAP and kicking back and being like, great, I don't have to go out and buy extra food for my kid because I'm getting SNAP. It's
$6 a day.
And
$6 a day per person is what SNAP gives you. You try eating on $6 a day per person.
Yeah.
You can't even buy a fucking cup of coffee in our neighborhood for that. So yeah.
Right. Well, coffee prices in our neighborhood are very expensive, but
they are very, to be fair, it's obscene.
So lots of work to do, and I want to keep us moving here. And I know it's been a sort of darker tone. Next week, I promise we'll do our top 10 rom-coms to watch for the weekend, but
God help us.
We'll just do a little switch. And the other thing that everyone's talking about, and, we don't need to talk about it too much because we have a great interview coming up with Wajahat Ali, who is amazing if you don't know him, from the Left Hook. And we really break down, I'm stealing your line, Air Hamas One, this Qatari airline gift, and what is just this jaw-dropping bribe. And the only thing I'll say about it, and I repeat it in the interview, so I won't go into it in too much detail, but I was looking at the New York Times headline, and all the headlines are like, this is skirting into some ethically, territory or whatever. It's like, it's a fucking bribe. Like, the headline should be, President accepts bribe from Qatar.
Right.
That's
terrorist affiliated country. Yes.
Yeah. It's that simple. And and what has been happening in the last couple of days with this Middle East trip and his meme coin and the deals that he's got going in the Middle East with these, Saudi Arabia, and it's the biggest grift in our history. And Wajahat does a great job breaking it down, so I don't want to go into too much about it now. But
then all I will say is I want everybody to call it Air Hamas 1. Please, when you talk about this with people, seriously, like this is the kind of thing that should catch on and should be used because that is fitting. It is an appropriate label for it. And we want to remind people over and over again that Qatar is not I'm sure there are really nice people living in Qatar. The government is not a nice government. Yeah. And it is important to remind people that not only is this a bribe, it is grift, it is inappropriate, it violates the emoluments clause, but we are taking this from a really, really unsavory government.
Yeah. That bankrolls Hamas.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Air Hamas 1 every time you can.
So having said all that, Jess, what's your reason for hope this week?
Oh, God. I'm sorry, you guys. There is a lot of reason for hope. And I've got a long list because, I publish them on Sunday, so I gather them all through the week. There's a lot of hopeful stuff happening, but something that really blew up on social media yesterday that a lot of you have probably seen. There was a mayoral election in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, some people inaccurately were like, oh, Omaha's a deep red city. No, it's not. It is a blue dot in a very red state. So on one level, we shouldn't be surprised that Democrats won a mayoral election there. But in this case, it is surprising and very exciting because it was a Republican incumbent mayor. She'd been there for, I believe, 3 terms. She was running for a 4th term. Her name was Jean Stothard. And she was in there. Like, she was a popular, deeply embedded, entrenched mayor who nobody thought, no matter how blue Omaha might be, nobody thought she was leaving. She won her last election by 30 points. Her last term. 30 points in a blue dot. It was a blue dot then, too. Although maybe, it's trending bluer. But she lost her election to a Democrat this time by 10 points. Right? So that is a 40. I mean, I'm sure the numbers might be 38 point, but that is a massive swing. And to put sort of a lovely icing on the cake, the person who won, John Ewing, will be the first Black mayor Omaha has ever had. So that is very exciting. And, we're just going to take that as a huge win. Please don't say Omaha is a deep red city because then people just discount everything you're saying. Blue city, hugely red state, but that was an entrenched mayor. And that seat just swung 38 points. So celebrate that. It's huge.
It's huge. And we were talking before we recorded about this too. She put out a really hateful anti-trans ad.
Yes.
And he countered it in a really great way. And, for all of the Democrats out there saying we need to move away from this issue because we're losing on this issue. Like, fuck that. Stand for what you stand for. Stand for protecting people's rights. And that's what voters want. Voters want, they get
Absolutely.
it. And they got it in this race. And it was very affirming and wonderful to see.
Yeah. Well, their flyer, and maybe I'll get a picture of it we can post here, but it said she's obsessed. The guy who won, his mailer went out and it said she's obsessed with potties, and it's got a picture of her sort of peering under a bathroom stall door. We're obsessed with fixing potholes. And that's it. That is the message. So I just think it was brilliant. Well done. Well done.
Well done. Chef's kiss to that.
And Steve, what is your reason for hope this week?
Well, I'll just say I have been really encouraged. We talk about the engagement that organizations are seeing all over the country, and indivisible groups and swing left groups and Dem clubs all blowing up. And, we launched our Blue Wave California Victory Fund a couple of weeks ago with MSW Media, our parent company. And I'm the executive director of Blue Wave California. That's my day job in addition to doing this show. And I have been really thrilled to see so many people stepping up and reaching out to do house parties and get involved in Blue Wave California, knowing how important it is to win back the midterms and knowing that, here's one place where we can really fight back and we need to organize early. So, that's given me hope. It's hard to stay down when my day job every day I'm getting new emails from people wanting to host a house party, wanting to support, wanting to volunteer.
That's great.
It's just it really makes my heart swell, and that's given me hope this week. And of course, we'll share the link on there. But our special link for MSW Media Practivist Pod listeners is msw.bluewavecalifornia.org. Shoot us a line if you want to host a house party.
Remember, the road to the house, to flipping the house, goes straight through the state of California. Really, it does. So you can't go wrong by giving to that fund.
It's true.
I said it.
It's true.
Yeah.
You said it, and it's true. Yeah, there's no other state that has such a huge impact on the midterms this year than California. So,
it's true.
So that's a ton, and we'll have some more to talk about on the other side of the interview. But until then, here is my conversation with Wajahat Ali. Wajahat Ali is the creator of the Left Hook Substack, author of his memoir, Go Back to Where You Came From, and other helpful recommendations on becoming American, co-host of the Democracy-ish podcast, a New York Times op-ed contributor, a Daily Beast columnist, recovering attorney. Come on, you know him, you love him. Waj, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. Basically, what that means is I haven't decided what I want to be when I grow up, but it's just a really fancy way of saying that.
You and me both. Yeah. Why limit the options, right?
Yeah.
It's been a minute since you and I spoke. Actually, I had to look back. It was February 2022 when we had the opportunity to chat. A lot has happened since then. Your kids are bigger, for one. We talk a lot on this show about finding balance and building resilience, so I'm going to start off by just asking how you and your family are doing. Are you finding time to, be together during all of this insanity?
I think it's very smart, the fact that you stress balance, right? Because what I always tell folks is I don't need more martyrs, right? The old school, if you will, heroic narrative was like the activist would be the martyr and suffer and take the arrows, and success was measured by how many arrows you had in your chest. And I'm like, this is probably not beneficial in the long run, both for your health or sustainability, or also, to be honest, to make it even attractive to young generations, because they're like, I saw my parents suffering and their marriage was terrible and they divorced and there was also drug and alcohol problems and they were bitter and then they died really young, right? So that's why I always tell people, right, this whole martyrdom complex, first and foremost, I need you alive so that I can use you for my master plan, right? You dying early doesn't help me. I need to extract as much as I can from you. And I also want you to be happy, because then you'll probably be more engaged. You'll be, a better partner to work with. You'll live longer. And then also, if you are in a relationship or have kids, then your partner and your kids will be like, oh, this is a pleasant person. I want to follow in their footsteps. So that's why I just want to preface by saying it's very important that you framed it the way you did, right? How you balance this, right? Because as we're dealing with fascism, and I call it fascism, I think we're dealing with a fascist regime, an authoritarian regime. If you want me to bring the receipts, I'll bring the receipts. I think we're dealing with a white supremacist regime that wants to violently take this country back to the 19th century. If you don't believe me, just listen to Stephen Miller, listen to Donald Trump, look at the warm embrace they gave these quote unquote white Afrikaner refugees while they are willing to get rid of Afghans, Cubans, and El Salvadoran immigrants who literally have done nothing except make America great again, right? But for me, what I try to do is, as we're trying to inhale all this fire hose of chaos, because that's what it is, right? Corruption, grift, racism, attacks on our civil liberties, the rise of fascism. I very deliberately spend time with my wife and my 3 kids. I want to be present with them. My kids are ages 10, 8, and 5. I get depressed even thinking about when they're going to leave and not talk to me again. Right. So I realize that, the wisdom that I got.
They do come back, just so you know.
They do come. But I've tried,
our daughter's about to graduate from college, and she's moving
now
back
she
home.
likes you.
So, yeah.
No, but what I try to do, right, is I try to take the wisdom of elders and try to hold on to it, because so many of them have told me, don't mess this up. You don't get this time again. Be present. The days are long. The years go fast. So being present with wife and kids, spending time with them. I forced my wife and I never go on dates. She works all the time. I work all the time. We're happy though, right? We're both independent, but I'm like, I'm going to force you to go see a movie. She goes, I don't know. I don't want to leave the kids. I'm like, just come with me. So we never go on dates. I took her to Sinners because I thought she'd like it. And afterwards she goes, that was good. I'm glad you did that. Right.
Really
so spending those time to do that, I build my Lego sets when I have time. I'll play a video game when I have time. I'll watch Andor when I have time, right? Work out. I've deliberately tried to do this because I realize this is a long haul and this is a long walk. And this is going to be a generational fight. Anyone who thinks that by 2026, everything will be better. Nope. This is a long 10-year fight, folks, to undo and redo all the mistakes that so many people are making, institutions, Democrats, even Trump's fascism. So you asked me a simple question, and I spent longer on it because I thought it was important. But I really think everyone who's listening, we have to be prepared for the long walk.
I couldn't have said that better. I mean, I think we've learned, especially like for me, I got into this when Trump was first elected in 2016 and, did the opposite, just threw everything I had at it, neglected my family, went to everything. I mean, I'm like the FOMO is real for me. I see someone else doing something. I'm like, well, why wasn't I over there doing that? That motivates me. But, I've really learned, I think we all have learned, like you said, this is our life's work. This is the work of being on this planet, being part of our shared humanity. This is the work of being a citizen, is to engage and do what we can. But it's, we can't live and die by every win and every loss, because we have a lot more work to do, and a lot of horrible shit's going to come down, and we're going to have to deal with that. And then, as you said, I really appreciate how you talked about rebuilding, because a lot of these structures of our government are being dismantled, and we're going to have to put them back together again. How are we going to do that? We can't put them back together the way they have been,
Nope.
Yeah. So I
think that's an important point, right? And I think this is what you're seeing as the fissure within these movements is because, and I'm using the word old not as a pejorative referring to age, old as a way of thinking. There's some folks, let's be honest. There's some people who are like, oh, we got restoration. See, Biden, he had a lot of strengths, he had weaknesses. His whole thing was restoration. What people don't realize is the old way of things weren't so great for Black people, women, poor people, workers, immigrants, Muslims, right? So it's not restoration, but you want reformation. You want to make it better. You're seeing the institution. You're seeing young people like, I don't have faith in these institutions, right? And you can't force it anymore. You can't shove it down their throats and say, accept capitalism, accept democracy, vote this way. You saw in the last election, Steve, they're like, nah, I'm going to sit out, right? Nah. So, that type of like, the power structure force feeding gruel to the masses and saying, take it. You're seeing even within, I think the left, progressive, Democrat, call it what you want, that whole non-MAGA ecosystem, you're seeing like an internal rebellion, which I don't necessarily think is a bad, right? It just goes to show though, what will we get? Will we get something that truly embraces a type of bold change that listens to the anger and frustration of young people? Or will we go back to the comforting status quo that I think no longer works? And ditto with the old tricks. They don't work with this fascist movement.
Yeah. And I'm an optimist. So, I don't know what the timeline's going to be. But I believe that we can whenever we do come through this and rebuild, learn from this, we'll certainly learn a lot about our country and who we are. You know, there's some things that many of us have been able to ignore for a long time that now it's impossible to ignore. As you said, we are now dealing with fascism and an authoritarian regime in the White House. So we're going to have to reckon with that. And I believe we'll be stronger once we do grapple with that and rebuild. But I don't know when that's going to be. So let's talk about what's happening right now. And I do want to. I was listening in on some of your great content on the Left Hook, and you were talking a lot about what everyone's talking about. I almost didn't want to bring it up because I sort of thought it was a red herring in a way, just another distraction by the Trump administration to maybe stop us talking about how they're trying to take away health care, which, you know, and get the reconciliation bill passed and all that. But you made some interesting points. I'm talking about the Qatari jet, about how this is so important. And for those of you who have missed it, Trump plans to accept a gift from Qatar of a modest gift of a $500 million jet. And I just want to read the New York Times headline on this. Trump's plan to take jet from Qatar heightens corruption concerns. The second Trump administration is blowing through limits on the mixing of public office and personal benefits. I mean, they could just say Trump takes bribe and left it there. But at the core of what drives Trump, it's always the grift, right? But if this is allowed to move forward, it would be the biggest grift in the history of the world. And you made some really good points. Just can you break down why this is so important?
Yeah, and I'm so glad, you know, you look at the anodyne framing by the New York Times, bending itself in a pretzel, doing everything it can to actually not tell people what is exactly happening, things that they see directly in their face, because they don't want to offend a bad faith right-wing movement that will hate them no matter how much they bend the knee, right? No matter how much the New York Times, NBC, CBS, ABC bends the knee to Donald Trump over the past 10 years and the MAGA movement, it doesn't matter. They still see them as enemies of the state, right? Part and parcel of the deep state, and they call us all pedophiles. I'm not making this up, folks. Those are the conspiracy theories. So that's number one, the framing of it. And the way you said it is exactly the way people should talk about it. Trump accepts bribe from Qatar. Insanely corrupt, nakedly and shamelessly corrupt, and selling out American national security to the highest bidder. Folks, Trump accepting a $400 million plane from a foreign government, a luxury plane in the sky, number one, is a bribe. Number two, it completely defies the emoluments clause, right? It's potentially illegal. But number three, the fact that he is willing to use it as his Air Force One should trigger DEFCON 1 signals all around the country for being a massive national security threat. He's saying that he's going to accept a plane given to him by a foreign country and use that as Air Force One. Air Force One, for those who saw the great movie starring Harrison Ford, right, where he beats up Gary Oldman and Russian terrorists, right? It's basically the Oval Office in the sky, right? It isn't just a place for Donald Trump to like unwind and relax like Mar-a-Lago. They discuss, or other presidents discuss, national security, military strategies, right? You expose your soldiers, your secrets, your allies, right? If that Air Force One is not secured. So you're taking a plane that is unsecured, quote unquote, gifted to you by a foreign country. That's literally the modern day version of a Trojan horse. Okay. Yeah. Because you have no idea. Is the plane bugged? You have no idea. Is the plane secure? You have no idea, Steve, if the plane is even compromised, right? Think about it. Maybe there's certain things they put on the plane that, if they want the plane to dip, if they want the plane to blow up, right? I'm just think as a foreign country and think tradecraft, right? Spies. Easy. Trump is for sale. We can literally give him a Trojan horse and he'll take it. And not only that, then he's openly saying, I will donate this plane to the Trump Presidential Library, because he's such a reader, which means he's going to gift it to himself. As this is happening, and the reason why I don't think it's a distraction, it's part of a larger narrative of how Trump is literally selling America to the highest bidder, where Trump has made the Oval Office into his ATM, where Trump is selling and willing to sell our national security to the highest bidder, right? You got Qatar saying, okay, tit for tat, I'll give you a plane. And guess what? The same week that Donald Trump gets a plane from Qatar, he's visiting 3 countries, his first foreign trip. Guess where he's going, folks? Qatar, UAE, Saudi Arabia. And guess what? As this is happening, he announced that he bypassed Israel, which used to be America's ally, right? And he's going to Qatar and Hamas, and he got the release of American hostage, which is good. I'm glad he did. Tit for tat, folks. And now we know, as of today of this recording, he's meeting Mohammed bin Salman. You know, that authoritarian killer who killed Jamal Khashoggi, right? He's meeting him, and guess who's there with him, folks? Elon Musk, the richest man on earth, and also tech billionaires, because they realize, hey, America's open for sale. Saudi Arabia, what do you want? We'll give it to you, right? And we know, on top of this, that there is a Signal Gate trilogy, not one, not a sequel, a trilogy where Pete Hegseth and others, National Defense Secretary Mike Waltz, before he got transferred to apparently maybe being the U.S. ambassador, they're all openly using Signal. An unsecure app that the Pentagon has warned them can be accessed by foreign actors. And we already know, at least on one Signal app, they accidentally invited Jeffrey Goldberg, a journalist, and Pete Hegseth lied about sharing confidential military information that exposed our military plans and our U.S. soldiers. God forbid, if there was a foreign actor that was tapped into it, that meant our soldiers would be compromised. It's all part of this narrative that our national security, our secrets are completely up for sale. And then the final one, Steve, because you can't make it up. On the heels of this news, we just found out, well, we've found out for a while, but even the New York Times talked about it a few days ago. Literally, folks, Donald Trump is auctioning access to himself,
Bitcoin,
to anyone in the world. If you buy his meme coin, he will invite you to have dinner with him at one of his golf clubs. Even more grifting, and whoever buys the most meme coin will get a personal tour of the White House. So think about it, Steve. If you're a foreign actor, holy shit, I can just drop, I don't know, $30 million on this useless meme coin, and I can get personal access to Donald Trump and literally be in his ear. And as we know about Donald Trump, he is susceptible to the insinuations and talking points of the person who flatters him the most and tells him the last thing that he hears before he heads out and grabs a microphone. So, Steve, do you now see why, to those who think it's just a distraction, why it's actually a big deal? And not only why it's a big deal, that if the media, corporate media, connected the dots for people, and if Democrats jumped on this and said, oh, so according to Donald Trump and Republicans, your daughter should only have 2 dolls because having more than 2 dolls is wasteful, but he gets to have a $400 million luxury palace in the sky. Palaces and jets for him, 2 dolls for you and your daughter.
Yeah, he gets to bring Don Jr. up there to do a bunch of blow in the Air Force Palace in the sky. So that'll be a fun Christmas for the Trump family. But yeah, I laugh because otherwise we are just crying because the corruption and grifting is so deep, and listening to Carolyn Levitt trying to defend this even on Fox News and saying that no, there would be no quid pro quo with this because they know who Donald Trump is, and Donald Trump is working for the American people, not for himself. It's just so asinine on its face. First of all, why would Qatar give $500 million worth of anything to anybody? Right? Like, why would you do that if you didn't expect something in return? Like, it's not just, well, Trump's a great guy and we like him. So, and boy, the Air Force One is 40 years old. Let's give the American people an upgrade. And
remember, folks, the question you should ask is who and what is Donald Trump willing to sell out? What's the quid pro quo? And I want to remind people that one of the many criminal charges that were against him, that of course got washed away by the Supreme Court, is he took confidential information from the White House and kept it in Mar-a-Lago and refused to give it back even when he was asked by the FBI repeatedly, and then lied about it, right? There was going to be an investigation into that, but that was killed. So think about it. Why did he take this confidential information? What was he going to do with it? Was he going to sell it? Who is he going to give it to? To the highest bidder, right? Everything is for sale. And you have to ask yourself, well, will I be for sale? Will my industry be for sale? Will my secrets be for sale? Will my data be for sale? And the answer is yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for breaking that down for us. The only thing that I will add to that too is, in case folks don't know, the current Attorney General, Pam Bondi, you know, had a little side hustle, working as a consultant for Qatar, where she was getting, about $110,000 a month.
$115,000 a month to be a lobbyist for Qatar.
Yeah. So, you know, you don't have to scratch the surface too deep to see what's going on here. But thanks for breaking that down. You know, as you pointed out, it's like a fire hose that this administration, this regime is putting out on us. And that's by design, of course, because they know that we can't keep up with everything. And the mainstream media certainly is, you know, always takes the bait. But in your mind, what are we missing? What should we really be paying attention to right now that's not getting reported enough?
So I do think this corruption and this grift is huge because he's willing to sell out America. That's one. Number two, the rampant white supremacist ideology and endgame of this administration. And I'm not using hyperbolic language. I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, the United States of America welcomed, in their words, the Trump administration, their words, refugees. They're not refugees. 59 white South African farmers were accepted with open arms based upon a white supremacist conspiracy that has gone mainstream over the past few years that alleges that the South African government is oppressing white South African farmers and taking the land. It's all BS. Donald Trump used the G word, not to describe what's happening in Gaza, but to describe what's happening to these white farmers. It's not genocide. They're not victims and they're not being oppressed, right? So as this is happening, right, a Trump official was asked, well, why are we welcoming these white farmers and at the same time denying Afghan refugees whom we promised, right, passage to America, the same people who helped U.S. soldiers against the Taliban, right? Why are we withdrawing the temporary protected status or trying to withdraw the temporary protected status of nearly 500,000 individuals, predominantly from Cuba, right, and Latin America? Why are we kidnapping brown immigrants and sending them to literally die in a foreign prison in El Salvador without due process? And he said, well, because these South African farmers, they can assimilate better. Translation. They're white. What
you
do
don't
you
need
and I
to
have
even
in common?
you don't even need to translate that. I mean, he said it out loud.
Wait, what do you mean assimilate? What do you mean? What? I don't. What do you and I have in common with an Afrikaner farmer, Steve? What does Chet in the Rust Belt have in common with an Afrikaner farmer? How? Tell me how this Afrikaner farmer, literally in Africa, now here in America, how he has a better chance of assimilating than, I don't know, Kilmar Garcia, who's been here for 5 years, married to a citizen woman, has a citizen kid. Oh, yes, the whiteness, right? And then you have Stephen Miller. Again, it's completely out of the news. Last week said this administration is looking into, suspending habeas corpus. That has only been done 4 times before because we're currently being invaded. There's no invasion. There's no war. But Stephen Miller and his white supremacist mindset and this white supremacist administration sees the existence of people of color as, quote unquote, invading America. So he's openly telling you that they're willing to suspend habeas corpus, which, by the way, folks, affects anybody, because this administration is perfectly fine, willing to kidnap and arrest anyone. If you don't believe me, look at Rumeza Ostrich. She was just released, 30-year-old grad student who was arrested and detained and kidnapped for a thought crime of co-writing an op-ed, and thankfully a couple of days ago a judge released her. So anyone who's listening right now, if God forbid this administration, unjustly detains you, they're saying, we're going to suspend habeas corpus because we're in wartime. And because we're in wartime, Stephen Miller and Donald Trump believe that they have the authority to suspend our civil liberties. And what I've been warning about, Steve, for a long time, and people say, oh, you're exaggerating, is if I'm Donald Trump, I hate to give him ideas. I said, take him literally and seriously when he says he'll run for president again. People are like, oh, no, he won't. Voila. 2028 hats, folks. They're openly telling you they'll run again. And then what I also said is he'll never leave. And if I was Donald Trump, what I would do is this, folks. I have to declare martial law. We're under war right now. We're being invaded. It's Antifa. It's the deep state. It's these immigrants. And folks, as the president, by the power vested in me and my interpretation of the Constitution, I have the right to protect the Americans. And I believe as the commander in chief, I have to declare martial law and suspend elections. But don't worry, it'll only be temporary. And this the same man, Steve, who right before he was elected said he's willing to unleash the military and National Guard against, quote, the enemy from within. Tell me if I'm exaggerating.
Yeah, you're not exaggerating. And that's why, we were actually a little slow with our protests to begin with, because we wanted to be so organized about it. You know that Stephen Miller is just licking his chops, looking for any excuse for, some kind of violence to break out at a protest.
Absolutely.
To do exactly what you just described. And so, we need to be out in the street, as we are. We need these protests to grow bigger, but they have to be organized and they have to be peaceful. We have to be really careful about that, because they're looking for any excuse to say, look, this is martial law. It's out of control. I mean, you're 100% right about that. I believe that. And look, man, I've actually thought about you a lot and folks working in this space. Your book is literally called Go Back to Where You Came From. You talk in your memoir a lot about, the inherent racism that exists in our country that you experienced and continue to experience. But like you said, now they're suspending due process. They're not deporting people. They're kidnapping people and sending them back to a country maybe where they didn't come from, or, just prisoning them in this, El Salvadorian gulag. And it's terrifying, and like you said, the suspension of habeas corpus is maybe like the next overreach step that they're trying to do, but that affects all of us. Like when you look down at okay, so I'm a white citizen, so they're not going to, just kick me out of the country or put me in jail. This is where this is leading for all of us, so.
Because it allows you literally to challenge your detention in court, right? So what he's saying is if they want to suspend a habeas corpus, the right to habeas corpus, what they're saying is you cannot then challenge your unlawful, potentially unconstitutional, illegal detention, right? So they can sweep up anyone they want, folks. And you think, no, you're exaggerating. Look at Rameza Ostrich. Look at Mahmoud Khalil. Look at Mayor Baraka of Newark.
Yeah.
The mayor of Newark. He had every right to just go inspect the ICE agency. And now ICE agents, truly, it seems like a sociopathic agency, right? Filled with MAGA brown shirts, openly and brazenly arrested him. And so what are you going to do to us? And they arrested the mayor of Newark, folks. So if they're willing to arrest public officials, politicians with cameras, right? They even Rameza Ostrich was literally kidnapped by masked ICE agents in broad daylight. And thankfully, some of her neighbors were there questioning them with the video. They didn't care. They waited for her for hours, literally had masks on, kidnapped her, sent her thousands of miles away. She was in a Louisiana detention center for 2 months. For what? No crimes, simply because she co-wrote an op-ed asking the United States to divest from Israel. That's it. That was her quote unquote crime, Steve, a thought crime. So to be detained and kidnapped for a thought crime, folks, it's happening. So that's the big story that I don't think people are talking about, using the words fascism, using the words racism, using the words white supremacy, and connecting the dots for people based upon what Trump has already said and what he's already done. What do you think is the end game, folks? Take him literally and seriously.
Yeah. Well, Waj, after having said all of that, which is really deeply scary stuff and important because that's what's literally happening, I'm going to ask you the last question that we ask all of our guests. And I asked you this back in 2022. It was maybe easier to answer then, but what is bringing you the most hope right now?
Yeah, it's a good question to ask. And since we're talked about Star Wars, and I have this Millennium Falcon Lego set behind me, and today is the
Is that
the
a Lego
last-
one? I didn't realize that. I thought that was just a model. That's cool.
No, that's the Lego Millennium Falcon, and next to that is the Y-wing. And also, to balance it, I have the Eye of Sauron. So you have evil and good. And that's all Lego. But we're also going to see the last batch of Andor episodes dropping. And Andor, for those who don't know, bring it all together. It talks about it. For those who don't watch Star Wars, it's okay. Don't worry. No spoiler. I'll connect the dots for you. But we all know, right? Star Wars is the rebels versus the Empire. The Empire is an authoritarian, oppressive force. George Lucas deliberately made these analogies. He was talking about Vietnam War, very deliberately. Andor, the show, talks about fascism and authoritarianism, according to the creator, Tony Gilroy. But in Andor, folks, there's no lightsabers. No one has superpowers. There's no Yoda. There are no Luke Skywalkers. They're just average Joes, average Janes and Joes, middle class, poor folks, workers, right? People who are suffocating under the boot of fascism. And the show talks about how average Joes band together to make a core of the rebellion and stand up and fight against the empire. And one of the quotes in Andor is, "Rebellions are founded on hope." Right. And what I will say is hope, like courage, is contagious. And so, hope is not just a statement. Hope is intention with a plan, faith in action. Right. Hope is demonstrative. It's performative. You have to do hope. Right. There's a great saying in Islam, have faith in God, but tie your camel first. Right. So what gives me hope is the fact that I'm seeing so many people who don't have money, who don't have power, who aren't elected officials out in the streets. I see so many people saying, all right, we're going to withhold our money from Target and Walmart and give our money to Costco. Okay, we're going to give our money to those law firms who are not bending the knee. And we're going to make sure that we, even though I graduate from Yale or Harvard and I'm a law student, I'm not going to work at those law firms, right? You're seeing people speak out. You're seeing people get on Substack and YouTube and start their own podcast. You're seeing people get informed. So that's what's getting me hope, is that I don't see much hope right now with the Democratic Party. And I'm not alone. I don't see much hope in corporate media based on that New York Times headline, even though I've written for New York Times before. But I do see hope with the people. And I think that's the way out. And what we've seen is when there is pressure, folks, we see people respond. You saw Microsoft respond and drop that law firm that bent the knee because of pressure, right? You saw Costco accept DEI because of pressure, right? You're seeing even some elected officials respond to Kilmar Garcia because of pressure. So don't underestimate the power of your voice, because we have the numbers. And when we organize and raise a stink, folks, people in power are forced to pay attention to us. And I'll say this, is that Trump is weak. I think he has a weak chin. I think all bullies are weak. And you've seen it took less than 100 days. He's underwater across the board.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Thank you for that. You're preaching to the choir, the glorious choir here on our show with that too. And also, I haven't watched Andor yet. And I am a Star Wars fan, and I hear it's great. So, so that'll be next on my list. I got to get my wife on board for that one too.
Convince her it's part of the resistance. Try to sell it to her.
I'll do that. And like I said, my daughter is moving back home, graduating from college in a couple of weeks. So, maybe there's an avenue there. Maybe we'll figure it out.
Yeah, see, that's my dream. My dream is I have 3 kids and I'm just already planting the seeds. I'm like, one of you will stay home and take care of your lovely father, right? And so my older ones are like, whatever. But my 5-year-old, she goes, yeah, Baba. I'm like, yes. So I'm working on it. If I could just get one to live close by, I'll be happy.
I'm sure it'll happen. You got 3. You got a 1 in 3 chance there.
I got 1 in 3 chance. I'm going to try.
Waj, thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Take care.
Okay, so we did not get any phone calls to our phone number this week, which made us a little sad. So if you want to call us and tell us what you did this week, that was fun. I know there haven't been any major protests right now. So, but
everyone's busy calling their Congress
their
members.
representatives. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and that's a great thing. But if you do want to call 818-824-4286, but I will just want to give a quick shout out, since we're shouting out activists in this section, the amazing people at ADAPT, which is an organization in support of rights for people with disabilities. They went into the hearings yesterday, the markup hearings, where they were talking about the Medicaid bill and protested. 90 of them went in there. They made so much noise because I'm sure lots of you saw the footage. 26 of them were arrested. And really, though, just like there was one voice in particular, I think it was a woman, who just kept shouting, "Don't cut Medicaid! Don't cut Medicaid!" And it was great. She just wouldn't stop. And it was a major disruption. I think they had to pause the hearings.
They did.
And
yeah.
Good for them. Good for them, because that's exactly what happened during the ACA fight. And it works. It's bad optics for the Republicans. So bravo to the folks at ADAPT. And remember, this really is life or death for people with disabilities. And we want to stand with that community and support them however we can.
It's heartbreaking, and it's inspiring, and it's terrible optics for Republicans to be dragging out and arresting disabled folks who are in wheelchairs, and so they are really putting themselves on the line in a major way. And just thank you for doing that, and keep up the amazing work.
Great job.
And thank you for joining us today. Don't forget that all of the links for our actions are in the show notes, so don't just listen, click on those links, take action. Please do subscribe, rate, and review on Apple, YouTube, or wherever you find yourself listening, and share our show with your friends and family, and make sure they are getting into action too. If you are able to support our show on Substack, we'd be very grateful for that support, and you'll get an ad-free version of our show to enjoy. We will be back next week with more Practivist Pod, and until then, remember, hope is in action.